Doctors and Dollars, we put out a ton of content, a lot of interviews with doctors, financial topics, strategies, things like that. I thought today we would take some time together while we're here in person and talk about our why we do Grand Vision, why we did Doctors and Dollars, why we help physicians. So Mike, you and I have known each other 18 years now, 2006. We met in college. Kind of talk about that time that we met all the way through college. You got your career started a little bit earlier than I did. Just tell me a little bit about that journey for you.
Yeah, for me, man, I mean, I left college to be a fireman. So obviously I actually wanted to be a doctor at first and passed out in a surgery. So I knew that wasn't going to be the path for me. But my dad was a fireman. I knew I wanted to be a fireman. So we were roommates for a while in college. And I decided, hey, man, I'm going to go be a fireman. I'm not going to keep going down this journey. So we kind of went separate ways for a while doing that. But then I met my wife and, started my career, met my wife. We had Maddie, our oldest, and, kind of just started going down that journey of adulthood then at that point.
Yeah, for sure. And I can tell you that, when I graduated college, it was 2010. You had Maddie in 2011. Mm-hmm. I felt a little behind the eight ball. I mean, obviously we were still best friends, but it was like you're starting a family. You had a full-time career as a firefighter. I was just getting out into the workforce. Didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. So I definitely felt behind, I guess it will. How did you feel, I guess, what was your perception of me when you were doing all these things and you're like, okay, recent college graduate, what's he going to do? How are you feeling my way?
Yeah, and I don't know. I remember those times. It's tough having kids young and early and doing that career because you look at, even if we talked about financial things, like comparatively, I feel like I'm making a ton of money, but then it's like, yeah, but I have a house and a mortgage and all the stress. Like you're coming out of college, it's like, man, I would love to go back and just have the freedom of college and just drink some beers and not worry about, as long as I got $20 in my wallet, I'm good, Yeah. So I think that was probably the biggest thing for me was looking and seeing that freedom and that just carefreeness, of life because I had, all the bills and everything starting super young. And yeah, I don't know. I grew up quickly, but then found myself too, kind of in the financial world, always yearning for more. I felt like, man, at first I remember those days and was like, man, this is so much money. To be 20 years old, working a full-time career, it was just like, this is unbelievable. I was still living at home when I started my full-time career. But then I saw like every time I hit those goals, that feeling of like, I made it, faded, and then I needed more money and I'd be doing side gigs and then I start doing this and it's like, man, when is enough going to be enough here, and
yeah, for sure.
That's when I don't know, I think that's what I remember of those days back then, early marriage, early fatherhood. So
yeah, I remember early on, like comparatively, I mean, let's say 22 years old when I graduated, and I'm looking at, I went to Wells Fargo to work a basic desk job. And I remember what I was making, which is hardly anything. And then talking to you and you're like, yeah, we're doing real estate. And I'm a full-time firefighter, which comparatively for a 22-year-old, firefighters get paid very well. Obviously now we look at it and we're just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that's all I made back then. But I just remember like all of the dreams and all of the things that you had going on. It felt like you had, several irons in the fire. And I'm just like, yeah, I wake up and sit at a desk for 8 hours and then go home. And even when I started a family, I felt like maybe I was catching up a little bit. It was still... man, I'm just not doing enough. I just always felt like I was a little bit slower, in that drag race than what you had going on. And even some of our other friends that were, doing well early on. I just felt like I was a little bit slower moving.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think that was that final turning point then when you decided like, I can't just stick this out and this can't be what the next 40 years looks like?
Yeah, I think it was just the dissatisfaction of just like getting up, doing the same thing every day. Really, at Wells Fargo, I was sitting on conference calls, and it was just, I would log into the call, sit there, listen, throw in a few words every now and then like that was my day, and it just wasn't fulfilling. And I just think back to like my dad he was a State Farm insurance agent for 20 years in our small town. Everybody knew him. He always worked one-on-one with people, and I always admired that, right? Like people would just come to his office, sit down at his desk, and they would just sit there and talk. And so I think thinking about that and like, he had a successful business, and I was just sitting in corporate America doing nothing.
Yeah.
I think that was that turning point where I was like, all right, I want to do something similar to that. Still went the insurance route, right, and went to a Fortune 100 company that, that does pretty well with insurance and things like that, and got there, and I was working one-on-one, feeling like that was going to be kind of that turning point that was going to satisfy me. I got out of quote-unquote corporate America and got into financial planning and learned a ton. But that was really the turning point of comparatively to what we do today.
Yeah. What was it? So when I came to you with the idea of Grand Vision, what was it that made you have the courage to say, you know what, like I'm going for it. I don't want to stay doing this path. I'm going down this new path. I'm willing to take the jump and let's do it.
That's a really good question. So my dad actually passed away 3 weeks before I graduated college in 2010. He had a major heart attack and he was 47 years old. And I think the moment that you approached me and said, I have this idea of Grand Vision. Here's what I want to do. Here's kind of the model that I've built, and I think we could help a lot of people doing this. Instantly thought of my dad, because what I was doing as a financial planner for 5 years was like setting it up so people, when they get to retirement, like that would be their, like that was all of our planning. Like, hey, when you get to 60, when you get to 65, here's all the steps that we're going to take today. I'm working with people our age, mid 30s to mid 40s was my common age range of clients that I was working with. But like we were never having discussions about today. Like it was always just in the future, here's what you're going to have, your 401ks, your IRAs, let's plan for life insurance when you die, that type of thing. We were never planning for today. And to be honest, like when I was in that moment, I didn't really think about it at that point. It was just, okay, we're retirement planning. That's a very common phrase. Everybody works for 40 years and then we retire. And I think that light bulb moment, like the split second you asked me about Grand Vision and said, hey, like, let's do this. My first thought was my dad, because I was like, he didn't make it to 60 or 65. He was doing all this planning with my mom for future down the road. And then he didn't even get to enjoy that with her. And so I think that moment when you're like, let's plan for now, let's change people's lives now. And like, why are we having people wait for retirement? And that's a question we ask people all the time. Like, why wait for retirement? I think that was just that light bulb of like, I'm going to leave financial planning world and the business that I had built there to start this new one. And in my mind, there's zero hesitation. Obviously, I talked to friends and family and they're like, what are you doing? Like, you're successful. Why are you going to essentially take 5 steps back and start over? But it was just the head matching the heart. And where I was, as soon as you brought it up while I was still there, my head instantly did not match my heart. And I think that was the moment where I just said, you know what, if I want to do this the right way and I want to feel good every day doing what I do, I've got to have why wait for retirement be the mantra.
Yeah. No, I remember those conversations and you sharing some of the things that frustrated you about the financial planning world. And when you talk about like the today versus retirement, and it's funny because you said like we never talked about today, but in the stories you actually did talk about today when you tell me, and the today was always like, what can you cut today to put away for retirement? What can you cut back on? Like, do you really need that today? Because if you put away for retirement, compound over years, it'll grow more and more. And the conversation was always like living less today for tomorrow. Yeah. And now hearing you say that, it's probably like subconsciously you just always knew that wasn't right, but it's what you had to do. That's what the job was. It's retirement planning. But like when I approached and said like Grand Vision could do this, and if we focus on cash flow and we set up an income statement and do this, we can help people live amazing lives today and forever in retirement as well. And I think that's probably, now hearing you say that's probably why it was just like, yeah, we got to do that. The conscious brain and subconscious is probably like connect. There it is. For sure. So
what was that head matching the heart moment for you? Like I think a lot of people who watch Doctors and Dollars, and I've talked about it before, you had a pretty bad accident in 2021. Was that kind of your turning point, or was there something before that where you said, hey, I think I love helping people and there's a way to do it, I just don't quite know how? And then what was that spark?
I never really knew I loved real estate. I was very intrigued by real estate when I bought my first house. I was like 20 or 21. I think I was 21. And it was just a very foreign concept. So the real estate side, that got triggered by buying my first house and having no understanding what I was doing. And I was like, I got to figure this out. Like, this is a huge purchase and I don't have a clue what all this paperwork is and everything. So that kind of put me in the real estate camp. And then obviously, I had dreams of being a doctor. So I kind of had an idea of how much money I was going to make going that path. And then I switched to be a firefighter and I was like, okay, that's a big gap. Like, I'm going to have to cover that somehow. And this real estate thing, it seems super complicated, so most people aren't doing it. So I'm going to figure this out, and I think I'm going to take the real estate path to close that gap, So, I mean, that went well. That went really well. And then, yeah, of course, my accident, I kind of always saw this, and I guess probably relates to your story with your dad. Your dad didn't have really a succession plan for State Farm when it closed. It wasn't like I'm going to die maybe at 47, so I better have a plan in place. Yep. And I think I was probably naively walking that same path, even though, obviously, we were close when your dad died, but we never had a conversation like that about like succession planning. We were young. But looking back now, I remember the real estate getting built, and I kind of always knew, like, I'm gonna have to do something. Like, the kids are, interested, but I just see the writing on the wall. All my friends that I grew up with, when their parents had a business and went to pass it down to them, none of the kids wanted it. It's like, dude, your dad's giving you this business. Like, I just don't want to do that. And they grew up with it. So it's just kind of old news to them. Yep. So I kind of knew that in my heart, like, I'm going to have to do something. But I just kept building it. And it was like, I always felt like it's not big enough to worry about yet anyways, And then, of course, when my accident happened, we don't have to dive into that total story, but I remember laying there in the street, and I really was just laying there thinking, like, I was totally satisfied with my life, 100% satisfied. And the two things that I felt very burdened about was, one, that my kids were going to grow up, and you just see kids who lose their parents, and it's a struggle. And I was like, man, my kids are going to grow up, and like, no matter what, they're just always going to carry that with them. They're just going to know. There's just no way to break it. Like, we lived an amazing life. There's going to be so many memories they look back on. I was so content, but I knew it's still just hard. So like, that was the one big, concern laying there. And then the other one was financially, I felt totally content. Like, I felt like my job as a husband was complete. Like, I built Morgan a financial stable foundation. We had life insurance. Like, I felt very good financially that she's going to have that. And then I just remember thinking about, like, what a burden though. Like, what responsibility that she has not had to deal with. And now she's mourning my loss and taking on this responsibility. And I don't know, like, if anybody's ever been in a position, like, it feels like these thoughts seem like 30 minutes worth of thoughts.
Sure.
And in that moment, it felt like 30 minutes. It feels like such calm and clarity, even though, stuff is going on like crazy around me. It's probably seconds, but it felt like an eternity. So I remember those moments. And then, of course, grace of God, the doctors at Loyola, helped me pull through. Like, honestly, such a miracle. Like, I remember giving Morgan that final kiss, rolling out to the helicopter, and it was like, this is probably it. Like, I remember like just breaking down crying, because it was like, that's literally the final kiss right there. But then I woke up in the ICU after my surgeries, and Morgan's right there. And as we kind of went through that, I saw firsthand like what I almost left, because her phone is ringing. Well, she had my phone, but my phone is ringing for her, and she's answering it, and she's like, they have this question. There's a closing here. The buyers of that house are saying like, exactly. And I was just like, and we got through it. You push through. You don't have a choice. Like, you signed up for it. You just have to do it. But it was terribly stressful, and like, it hit me like a ton of bricks of like, I did not have this as good as it was set up, as well as it was set up. I did not have it set up right. I was missing pieces. Morgan should not have been the linchpin. If I go down disabled, die, we just want to go on vacation, whatever. Morgan should not bear all that responsibility. I remember having that. So then, I try to cut short, but so then through recovery, I'm laying in a bed, I can't walk. I can barely use my left hand. My right hand was totally out of service. So there's just very limited things to do. And I really wasn't in a mindset to like watching a movie. You can only watch so many movies a day when you got 24 hours. It's like, oh God, it's so boring. So I just started kind of researching and learning, and I'd watch YouTube videos and read a book and read biographies about these people, like a Rockefeller type person, Warren Buffett's, like these people that you just have heard of, they had a ton of money. And just thinking like, what can I do to match that? How did they step away? How did they pass away? And it just kept flowing and nothing changed, So it kind of led me down that rabbit hole trying to figure that out. And that's when, I stumbled onto, I didn't even really realize it was a family office at the time, but I remember just seeing like the succession planning and this power team of people are what was the common denominator in all these people's lives. Was they may be the decision maker, but they had a power team of people. And at the time of, emergency or whatever, one of these power team people just step up to become the decision maker. Not Morgan doesn't have to have that responsibility. And one day when you die, you don't have that awkwardness of like telling your kids before you die, or the kids saying like, I don't want the business, just sell it. All that like family drama that is caused by those moments, none of that was there for them. Of course, reading these biographies, I'm sure there was some stuff, but they had set it up in a way where nobody bared the burden of responsibility. And I was like, kind of realized that was at the heart of it. You just want to build something that can grow as great as it can. You want it to last forever. and you want it to not cause burden to your family. And like those are kind of the key metrics. So then I just started writing notes down and thinking like, how could we do this? How could this work? You know, and it just led one thing to another, and it started with the fund and saying like, well, if I put all my investments into one vehicle, that's easier to manage than
Sure.
50 properties across, you know, 3 states. That's 50 individual things. But if I put them all here in a fund, now you just need somebody who can manage that fund. Granted, there's 50 properties in there, but there's pieces and, you know, processes in place. So started working on that. And then it turned into, you know, talking about like some sort of like a community, like a club. Like I can't afford to hire a full-time CPA, a full-time attorney, a full-time this. Like you can't afford to do that. You need like, and that's why all these family offices, you know, had to be 50 million plus, because you just you don't have the money to do that. So it's like, okay, it has to be collectively. Some like other people out there, if I need this, other people probably need this. And I was like, okay, so if other people need it collectively, if I could put this group together, we can collectively
share resources.
share these resources to build what we need. So how would I make that happen? We did a podcast the other day about dreams, right? And it was like, not, is this possible? Is this how you do it? It's just like, if this was possible, what would it look like? And just start kind of drawing stuff out, you know, and then that led to conversations with you, and I was like, you know, hey, how you been since the accident? What have you been doing? I'm like, I'm thinking of doing something like this, you know, I'm thinking, here's some of my thoughts, this is what I'm thinking. And then, you can see the spark in your eye, like, am I going to be a part of this? Like, this is, I kind of fit that side role. You said power team and financial advisors, one of the people, like, not sure if you know this, but like, you could just, obviously didn't say that, but you could just kind of feel that, you know, that excitement for it, you know, and it was just kind of one thing after another. And it's been a crazy road, but that was really the genesis of it in that moment, you know. So
very cool. Lots to unpack there. I think the big thing that I heard you say is that, and we'll use the football analogy because we've done that in other videos, so we'll just keep the train rolling, but you had a lot of players, but you didn't have the playbook. And then the family office, or the design that you had in mind, was like bringing in the head coach, bringing in the offensive coordinator, like people who can coordinate all those things. You just had a bunch of football players, you know, your family being one of them. Like, you just needed a playbook to actually structure it and know, what does this look like during a game. And so you really design that, and it's like, well, you know, I can't afford all this, so like, what if I build the structure, I have the idea, but then we collectively bring in, you know, people who have that shared idea or the need for those same resources, and we just share them, we use them together. And I think it's such a cool thing to be able to do that. And I remember when we first talked about working with physicians, like, I knew what your reason was, and it was, I mean, the physicians at Loyola, you know, the surgeons that saved your life. I remember coming to visit you, I think it was the day after your surgeries, and just all the people in and out, and like everyone saying like, yeah, he's gonna be all right. Like, it's gonna be some physical therapy, and it's gonna be pretty hard, but like, he's gonna make it through it. It's not a life or death thing. Now it's just a quality of life thing. And I mean, I don't want to speak for you. I think your quality of life was vastly improved by those physicians. And so, we created the fund first. Real estate was on our mind when Grand Vision started, and then you came to me and you're like, hey, this is kind of our next level. Like, I think I want to work with physicians, I want to be able to help them. Here's my idea. Like, I just don't know what this looks like. Being in the financial planning world, I just knew what a family office was. That's kind of like that, you know, financial planners and financial advisors work with, you know, everyone from here to here, but everyone that's net worth is up here, they're at a family office, and everyone kind of knows that in the financial planning world. And so when you started describing, like, you know, these shared resources, and I want to work with a small number of people, and I want to like provide great experiences and give them opportunities for alternative investing. I'm like, yeah, dude, you're talking about a family office. You're like, what the heck's a family office? So I think it was just a culmination in a series of things. I mean, not that I want your accident to be one of those things in the series, but I think all of the culmination of all of these things led us to Grand Vision. You know, not only Grand Vision Companies as an umbrella, but Grand Vision Family Office. We would have never got here if it wasn't for all the things in our past. You know, my dad's death, me watching you grow a real estate business, you not being satisfied with all of your planning when your accident happens, me not being satisfied in the financial planning world, knowing that there's something more that I can do to help. Like, all of these different paths, you know, just kind of intersect at the same point, and it got us to where we are today. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I remember, you know, a lot of people say, you know, oh, it happened for a reason, or like the Christian community, which, you know, they say like, the devil's trying to stop you from something, and like I still just look back, it's just so wild, because I'm like, that was just such a blessing. Like I never could have even had the idea of what we're doing today if I didn't go through that. I would have been like, same position as your dad, thinking I still got a lot of time. Like I know this is something, but it's at the very bottom of my list.
Yeah.
I have forever. Like I'm just going to keep going down this path, and that's the wild thing is because I went through that, I realized like, oh man, this happens at any time of life. So you got to be prepared, but like, wow, that actually is a huge impact that like I almost got to like die and witness what I left, because I'm laying in ICU and like I can communicate, but I can't really do things. So you got to like watch like the stress of Morgan answering phone calls, dealing with it. And it was like, that is not okay. Like I got to do something here. And if I didn't go through those moments, I just would have never had that. I would have always had that at the very, very back burner, low priority, and thought, maybe one day when I'm 70 or something, I'll have to figure this stuff out. But for now, I'm good. So yeah, man, I remember that. Why don't you share a little bit about the Doctors and Dollars quick of how that came about then? So you knew that that was my two things. Like I wanted to very much work with just good people and I wanted to give back in some way. And I just remember telling you and thinking about it was just like, what am I good at? I was a firefighter. Like how am I going to go change the world as a firefighter now that I can't be a firefighter? Like that was my skills. Okay, I'm good at real estate. Like that's helpful for me. That benefits my family. But what can I do in this world, And I just remember like, the surgeons that were there, it was just such a blessing that those surgeons were there. It all worked perfectly. And I just remember saying like, I want to do this for doctors. And the other thing that I told you when you're like, well, doctors, they do this or they're in this or they have this mindset or from the financial planning world, you knew some of these mindsets and some of the like they stick very much to the 401k and they, I don't know that they're going to really be open to this. And it was just like, there's got to be other doctors out there that feel this way. There's got to be doctors that feel like maybe it's not the surgeons as much as I would love to just give back to the exact people. It's like, maybe it's not them, but to the community as a whole, like there's doctors out there. I knew when I was at the firehouse, not every fireman is like me. But there's some that are dreamers. There's some that want more out of life today. There's some that aren't going to just work 30 years and say, well, at the end of this, I'll retire and take a pension and go on about my way. Like that is a majority, but there's not everybody. Like I knew that existed in the world. And then, from back in the day when I did some coaching of real estate for people, and I was like, it is just so hard to teach people who don't make money first how to make money and then how to manage it. It was like, it's just so much easier. Like if we can find the doctors, they've already put in the work. They already make good money. We don't have to teach that. The medical school did that on its own. And now we just need to show them like, now here's how you take that money and just live an amazing life. Because that was the most stressful part of the coaching back then was like,
absolutely,
somebody dreaming of making 100,000, but they make 40 and they have like nothing to spare. And you're trying to show them how to do real estate with almost no money in the bank. And it's just like, man, this is like, it's honestly just hard. Like you just need some money to get started. It would make your life a lot easier, and
very parallel story with financial planning. Just because working with clients that were again our age, there are doctors our age, and so it's like I would work with families that are making $150,000, $200,000 of household income between the husband and wife, and they're thinking long term. They're thinking their 401ks, the retirements, things like that, but they don't have a lot else. There's not a lot of leftover disposable income to do other types of planning. And so it's like, it was hard to get them moving. And they were always talking about, like, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And eventually I'm going to be making $500,000 a year, when I'm 50 or 60 years old. But then I also had physician clients who are already making $500,000 a year. And those conversations were completely different.
Yeah.
They have the resources or, the financial means to do a lot of this planning. Problem is they just didn't have the education. And so a lot of my conversations with them were like teaching them all these different things because in medical school and residency, you don't get a lot of financial planning education. So it's like,
you're the target at that point. You're not the target for education. You're the target for the 22-year-old financial advisor.
But you work with a business owner who's making $200,000 a year. Like he probably went to college and got a business degree and he knows the basics. He just doesn't have the financial means. Whereas, a physician's on the other end. They have the financial means. They don't have the business acumen. They don't have the, the financial education. And so it's like two opposite end conversations. But I found myself really enjoying, I do like working with business owners as well, but I found myself really enjoying talking to those physicians because there's just so many things that we could do from a financial perspective. You asked about the genesis of Doctors and Dollars. That's really what it was. As soon as we decided, like, hey, we want to help physicians. You have more of the emotional tied to it and the quality of life tied to it. I was thinking the financial side of things. But like Doctors and Dollars really just was born out of all of the conversations that I had with physicians and all of the, I don't know, they're very smart. They're born learners, and they always have great stories. And so like I would have these stories, I'd be sitting across from a husband and wife, there for financial planning reasons, but they're telling me about a terrible surgery they had, or the office politics of their clinic and all of these different things, and insurance companies, and how that's going to be the downfall of healthcare and that kind of thing. And so I don't know, when you mentioned physicians, and I was like, there's a way we can pull these stories in. Like I'm being told all these stories, and to your point, everybody has these stories.
Yeah.
So like if we can share those with the healthcare community, with the physician community, there's going to be that sense of camaraderie. Like they're going to hear this and be like, oh my gosh, like even though this doctor's in Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm in Los Angeles, like he's going through the same things I'm going through.
Yeah.
He's feeling the same burnout situations and the same politics that they have to deal with. And so that was really where it was born. Doctors and Dollars, as it is when I'm talking to physicians, that's where it was born. I wanted them to be able to share their story, the highs, the lows, everything that they have going on, so that other physicians can hear it. And there's that, community is the best word I can use. That there's a community of doctors that are like, okay, I can, that resonates with me.
Yeah.
And then obviously we've branched off, and the education that we like to provide to physicians, that was the birth of Wealth Wednesday, Daily Dollar, where we talk about current events. Like it is just grown, not just because the amount of followers and the listeners that we have of the kind of that origin Doctors and Dollars. It was kind of a necessity to say, okay, if we already have the doctor community listening to us, we need to be providing resources and help and education to them. Free is the best way to do it, right?
Yeah.
Like just throw it on a podcast, have a conversation, and if there's even one doctor that listens to a Wealth Wednesday and says, wow, I never knew that existed, and they go out and they implement a strategy that we talked about, like we've done our job.
Yeah, and I remember same thing. You coming from the financial advising world, very strict corporate rules, secrets, don't share this.
Yep.
And I remember I feel like we're giving a lot away for free. Like, why would anybody hire us? Because that was the old mindset. Like, why would somebody hire you as a financial advisor if you just gave them everything for free? And I was like, man, I'm telling you, I watched these videos. I've learned in all of these biographies. Everybody just keeps saying, just give it away for free. If you give it away for free, you'll find your people. And I was like, you just got to trust. I don't know. I've never been a billionaire. These billionaires say it. I just got to blindly trust. And I just remember saying, if we give it all away for free, people will know what we're capable of, and they'll want to work with us then. I think that's the mantra of, if we're secretive, you're not showing what you know. So let's just give it all away. And then people who want all that content but don't want to DIY it, and there's I just want to work with you. You obviously know what you're doing. Just take care of things, And I remember, as those episodes and started transitioning to the Wealth Wednesday and stuff was, all of that of let's just give it away for free, And I remember too when we were talking about, it's funny because we started with you started just doing the Doctors and Dollars, and then I kind of joined doing the Wealth Wednesday and the Daily Dollar. But in the beginning, it was I've had conversations with doctors, and it's okay, we have a sample size of 20, 50 conversations maybe. I was how do we get a better sample size to know, what do they need? What are they struggling with? How can we build this? We're starting from scratch, so we can build this specifically for this niche. And I was how do we do that? And that's when initially, before Doctors and Dollars had name, it was honestly, I think a podcast. I remember this guy, he does Entrepreneur on Fire. I think his name's John Lee Dumas, but he does Entrepreneur on Fire. And he had no business education. So he said, how can I get business education? So he just did a daily podcast, and he would just interview business owners. And he was if I interview business owners every single day, and I get to ask the questions that I think are important, I'm going to just continue to learn. I'll be the best business owner. At the end of a year, I have 365 basically mini courses with these business owners. So I just remember having that conversation, I think we need to do a podcast. And if we interview doctors, that gives us an insight. They're just going to share, and then we can find out how to help them and build it around that, And then I remember he texted me what about Doctors and Dollars? I was I like that name, And then it just, kept growing from there. So, but.
What are some things, because I'm in the mix of it, and so outside of the conversations that I have with physicians on the kind of I call it the umbrella, Doctors and Dollars brand, what are some things within Doctors and Dollars that you're excited about that's coming up?
I'll tell you one thing I'm excited about, honestly, because I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I remember my idea initially was when I'd listen to a podcast, I'm listening for what is it that they need? How can we help? What are they saying between the lines of their conversation? what are they saying is a need in their life, so we can build this around that, but as I listened to the podcast, even starting with the first one with Todd Otten, it's like, man, this is a good podcast. Like, there's a lot to learn here. And I found myself like I would get lost in the conversation, and then I'd have to go back and be like, wait, I was listening for something specific. Like, I'm trying to figure out what are they saying that they need? Because I just get lost. Like, wow, this is a good conversation. That's really insightful. I never thought about that, and it's just cool to get a back end view of a whole different world that, we've never been in. But the Doctors and Dollars now that it's continued to grow and we refine and man, I just honestly, I'm like ecstatic, 10 out of 10 of everything we got going on right now. Like, we just got back from the Grand Tetons with our family office. Like, that was an amazing trip, and so super excited about where that is going. The Doctors and Dollars, we added now, so we've done the Wealth Wednesdays, and now we're starting to get a little bit deeper in the Wealth Wednesdays. Like, we added some philosophy to it and dreaming, and like, I absolutely love those conversations. The Daily Dollar, like, I would sit there and read, news articles, and then we'd text each other, and now we get to have, where we're discussing these Daily Dollars and discussing, what's going on in the current, like, this is my daily life anyways, and now we get to just talk about it and have fun and share it with the world. So that's been awesome.
For sure. And I think there's a good marriage between what we have going on with Doctors and Dollars and Grand Vision Family Office. I think there's some melting over of both, which is healthy. But again, it's all education, it's all resources, it's all about moving forward. I think the biggest thing that I'm excited about, we have the 5-day financial challenge going on. I'm so excited. Like, it consumes our day. Like, every day we're looking at it. But it's going to be so helpful for people. It doesn't have to be for physicians, but that's really where we lean. But like, just the content in that 5-day challenge, again, it's free. We're giving away all the stuff for free. But like, I think the questions and the conversations and the people that we're going to meet through this, that's what gets me most excited. Like, there's physicians out there that are going to take the challenge, that are then going to meet us and want to hang out with us all the time. And that gets me excited because, there's just great people in the world and we just don't know them yet. And I think if we can give them education, strategies, get them thinking about their mindset a little bit differently around finances, but then we create a community that can lean on each other, even for other things, even if it's not.
Yeah, stuff we know nothing about.
Stuff we know
RVUs
nothing about.
and
exactly.
else.
So it's like, if we can have that community where there's a lot of dialogue and a lot of interaction, that's what I'm most excited about. And I think that's where Doctors and Dollars is going to be going, is that way. You got to be don't get a bee sting. And so I don't know. That's my biggest excitement right now. And by the time this video is a year or two old, I'm sure there's going to be something else that I'm even more excited about, and we'll have to put out another one of these. But there's big things coming. I don't know. I just wanted to sit down today and talk about why doctors, why Grand Vision, why Doctors and Dollars, like, kind of give the audience that origin of where we got where we are. We're not just some two random guys that just threw this together haphazardly, last week. There's been a lot of build up in it, and it's all culminating right now.
I mean, a lot of build up too, that like, at the time you just had no idea what that was leading to. At the time, it's like, this is crazy. Why am I going through this? Why is this what my life looks like? Why is, even back, like, how does Mike make that money? And I'm still in college. And then it's like, I'm in my head, not sharing, like, dude, how is this not enough money? This was a ton of money a year ago. This was a ton of money. And now it feels like I still don't make enough. Like, all these moments, you look back so far now, and it's like, man, it all led to like what we're doing today, Just to cap too, you just made me think of a point when we were in the Tetons. And I just remember talking to you, and you're like, man, like, look at this. This is just awesome. And I was like, it's crazy to think that there's people out there that we've never even met yet, that like, the next trip, we're gonna be hanging out with them. And like, it's only going to get better. Like, that is crazy. We think it's so awesome. And it's like, but there's more families coming that we haven't even met yet. So what we think is awesome is gonna be multiplied very soon. And like, that excitement, that anticipation of like, knowing that the gift is like a Christmas tree, right? Like, knowing the gift is coming, but you don't quite know what it is. Like, we know we're gonna have awesome families, we just don't know who they are yet. And like, that excitement is like, that's awesome.
And we don't know where the next trip's are. We had a handful of families, most of them physicians, on that trip. And at the end of it, they were like, this is one of the best. I would have never booked, Western Wyoming, the Grand Tetons. Like, this would have not been a vacation that we put together. And we just told them, hey, here's where we're staying, book a plane ticket, meet us out there, we'll take care of everything. And everyone left like, this was awesome. Like, what's the next one? How are you going to top this? Like, we had someone that was like, this is the best one ever. I don't know how you're going to top the Tetons. And it was great, being 15 feet from a bull moose, but not intentionally either. But like, that's some more excitement. What is our next trip? Who are the families
Yeah.
that are going with us on that next trip? What are those families going to say when they get done with that trip? Like, yes, the family office is, there's financial planning and there's, investments and there's a lot of financial things that we do, but a lot of what we do is like just creating experience and showing people like you can design a dream life and execute on it so that you're in the Tetons, right, on a Wednesday afternoon hiking next to a bull moose. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of people just don't realize that. And so I would echo your same excitement of like, who are these families going to be? Where are we going to go? There's a lot of things coming up that are a ton of fun.
Yeah, the finances are always fun, but there's no doubt that a Grand Tetons trip really is more fun than talking finance. It just is, you know.
Absolutely. Well, what final thoughts do you have? I mean, this has been a great conversation and helping the people understand who we are, why we're doing what we're doing. Hopefully, they just get a glimpse into
I don't know.
what we are.
I mean, you got any question that you've always thought like I should just ask him? I can't think of any final thoughts. I think we nailed it. Every time we think we're wrapping up, something else pops up. But no, I can't think of anything right now.
Well, we'll come back with more Wealth Wednesdays, more Daily Dollars. I'll be interviewing more doctors. We'll keep growing this thing, and hopefully we get to meet more and more doctors that become part of our world.
Yeah, I'm just glad I guess that's the final thought. I'm just glad that the stars aligned on us coming back through the United States, headed for Chicago, and we got to sit down together. And
Absolutely.
I think it was a great idea to sit down and have this conversation. We're on Zoom calls most of the time, so to sit in person, I think was awesome to be able to have this
face-to-face.
conversation. Yeah.
All right.
So,
There we are.
all right,
See
buddy.
ya.